I hope it doesn't sound arrogant when I say that I am the greatest man in the world.
Thank heavens the Rings of Power is finally finished. Now I can focus more on House of the Dragon and maybe actually have a little fun, because I'm getting left behind on the episodes here. So where was I when I left off? The Queen's son Aemond had just had a brawl with Rhaenyra's children as well as Daemon's, causing him to lose an eye when the princess's youngest child slashed him with a knife. The Kingsguard arrived to break up the fight, and we cut to the Great Hall. The king brought everyone together to find out what happened, and the kids are bickering non-stop. I know I've been complaining about the time jumps, but please can we cut another 10 years and get rid of these kids? At this point I'll even take another uncomfortably long 10-minute scene of a woman in labour screaming. Why has this become a trend? Why does Hollywood think that I want to hear bickering children in my entertainment? I occasionally watch a series called Evil on the CBS network, and one of the protagonists has 4 daughters who squabble and talk over each other constantly, and it makes the show a lot less enjoyable to watch. That and the constant insertion of politics. I maybe missed the meeting where the world decided that all art, past, present and future, everywhere in the world had to revolve around the current American political system. And this invokes an interesting topic. When does a piece of film or art cease to be art and instead become political propaganda? I mean, how dare Tolkien not address the election of Donald Trump in his writing? It's clearly no excuse that Tolkien died in 1973. Thank heavens we had Amazon to come along and correct that clear oversight. Now, taking the definition of art to be the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. And I'd also maybe add to enrich people's lives, to make people happier or more contented, to encourage eudaimonia. The most extreme version I can think of for art becoming propaganda was the CW show Supergirl, where they had Superman in one scene awkwardly use the phrase, "I'm with her," as a reference to Hillary Clinton's campaign slogan for that election year. And in the same series, they had the villains openly talking about their planet Daxam and how they plan to make Daxam great again, as an obvious reference to Donald Trump's famous campaign slogan. At that point, has the show stopped being art and become instead a long campaign ad? So where does House of the Dragon fall in this? Because from some media sources, it does not seem to be immune. There was a story that ran in the UK paper The Metro, which is not a great news source, but if I was to say it was bad, that would give the incorrect impression that there's a functional news source in the UK. But there is a Mark Twain quote that goes, "If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do, you're misinformed," which is quite clever, and that would be expected of him, but sadly the quote is somewhat brought down by there apparently being no evidence that he ever said it. There's also a quote attributed to Thomas Jefferson saying, "Nothing can now be believed which is seen in a newspaper. Truth itself becomes suspicious by being put into that polluted vehicle." In the Metro article, they quoted House of the Dragon actress Olivia Cooke, who said that the overturning of Roe v Wade was reflective of the Game of Thrones world, saying, "It's incredibly disheartening. Women in Westeros, they're expected to breed as early an age as possible, and in Texas, that's the same." But those things are not really the same at all. Being forced to get pregnant is not really directly comparable, morally or otherwise, to not being given an abortion. It misses out one, let's say, very crucial part of the process, and also misses out any rights that unborn children should or shouldn't have. So sadly, it appears that Olivia Cooke is maybe not the sharpest chisel in the toolbox. House of the Dragon showrunner Miguel Sapochnik was quoted by Bounding Into Comics as saying, "The hope and intention of the show, beyond the primary one of entertainment, is to shine a light on how the experience of men and women in this world has parallels to our own past and present. He went on to say that the theme of the childbirth scene from episode 1 was torture, saying each birth in this show has a theme, just as the battles I've filmed in the past have a central concept. The theme of this birth scene was torture. So in other words, it would seem that they've made the show intentionally worse for the viewer to watch because they wanted to force in politics. What they claimed was the primary purpose of the show, that being entertainment, has come a distant second to the need to comment on decisions taken by the US Supreme Court. Getting back to the show, the Queen is angry at Aegon for being drunk and not being there to defend his brother. Why was nobody keeping an eye on the kids at all? The King and the Queen are enraged that their son has lost an eye, and this all just kind of feels disjointed. I've no idea how the kids ended up this way because it all happened off camera. I've no idea why Alicent and Rhaenyra have changed into the very different characters that they are now. Because again, it was all off camera. A long argument begins and all parties are lying thoroughly throughout, including the King. Rhaenyra says her kids were defending themselves against an accusation that they're illegitimate, which they are, and they weren't defending themselves against anything. Her and Daemon's kids attacked first. The King wants to know why his son Aemond told this lie, and who told him, and he asks this despite the King knowing that the entire thing is true. His weakness is the cause of nearly all of the country's problems. His son points the finger at his older brother Aegon. Rhaenyra was hoping he'd point his finger at the Queen. The Queen was hoping the King would have to face up to the truth. So the King questions Aegon, and he says, "We know, Father. We all know. Just look at them." There are times when being kind is no real kindness at all. Like if you catch your child stealing. It's no kindness to pretend it didn't happen. So you either have to remedy the behaviour or encourage them to get into politics. The King refuses to do anything and demands instead that they stop the infighting. The Queen says that's insufficient. Her son's lost an eye. The Queen wants one of Rhaenyra's son's eyes in return. The King refuses and she orders Sir Criston to take out an eye on her behalf. And boy did that escalate quickly again. Sir Criston refuses, saying that he's her protector, and he's right. Taking children's eyes out is hardly in his remit. The King says it's over and says anyone that questions the children's legitimacy from that point on will have their tongue removed. The Queen grabs a knife from the King and goes for the children. She's stopped by Rhaenyra.
You've gone too far.
What have I done but what was expected of me? Forever upholding the kingdom, the family, the law.
As Alicent and Rhaenyra divide, the two camps form around them, and it's a nice piece of foreshadowing for the coming conflict. Rhaenyra seeks alliances for what's coming. She wants to marry Daemon, but her husband is in the way. So they fake his death so he can go and be gay on another continent. And all they have to do to make it work and make his parents think he's dead is kill an innocent person so they can use his corpse to fake the death. The morality of the characters in this show is appalling. So that's it for episode 7. A bit of a mixed bag for me.
Could you make me a cup of tea, please, Stephanie?